Look at any map of the ancient world. You will see a mosaic of kingdoms and tribes rise and fall like waves on a shore. But in the center of it all, for 1,000 years, there was a constant, a single sprawling entity that believed with every fiber of its being that it was the world. They called it Roma, the eternal city. But eternity is a heavy burden. This is not just a story of emperors and empires. This is a story of an idea, the idea of order in a world of chaos, the idea of law in a world of whim, the idea of civilization itself, built with brick and later with marble. It is a story of breathtaking ambition, staggering genius, and human frailties on a colossal scale. It is the story of the rise and the fall. And we begin not with a king, but with a people possessed by a furious, desperate need to be free. Our story begins in the mists of the 8th century before Christ, a small settlement on the banks of the Tiber River. It was a hard life, surrounded by more powerful neighbors, the Etruscans to the north, the Samnites to the south. For its first 250 years, Rome was ruled by kings. The last of these, Tarquin the Proud, was a tyrant, and his downfall would forge the soul of the Roman people. The story goes that his son, Sextus, raped a noblewoman named Lucretia. She, after revealing the crime to her family, took her own life. It was the final outrage. Led by a man named Brutus, the Romans rose up. They drove the Tarquins out, and they swore a sacred oath. Never again would one man hold absolute power in Rome. Thus, in 509 BC, the Roman Republic was born. Its heart was a brilliant, if messy, system of balance. Power was shared. 2 consuls, elected annually, held the authority of kings, but could veto each other. The Senate, a body of elders, provided wisdom and continuity, and the assemblies gave the common people, the plebeians, a voice. It was a system designed to prevent tyranny, and for centuries it worked magnificently. Why? Because of the Roman citizen soldier. The backbone of the Republic was the legionary, who was also a farmer, a father, a patriot. He didn't fight for a king's glory. He fought for his land, for his republic, for Roma. They defeated the mighty Carthaginian general Hannibal in a war that brought them to the brink of annihilation. They absorbed the Hellenistic kingdoms of the East. The entire Mediterranean became Mare Nostrum, our sea. But victory was a poison chalice. The vast wealth of conquest flowed into the hands of a few senatorial families. The small farmers who had won these wars returned to find their lands ruined, bought up by the rich. The citizen soldier was replaced by a professional army, not loyal to the Republic, but to the general who paid them. The system of balance was breaking. The stage was set for a century of civil war. The cracks became chasms. Ambitious men, Marius, Sulla, Pompey, Crassus, used their private armies to bend the state to their will. The old rules were gone. It was in this cauldron that a young patrician populist emerged, a man of immense ambition, charm, and genius, Gaius Julius Caesar. After conquering Gaul, the Senate, fearful of his power, ordered him to disband his army. Caesar stood at a small river called the Rubicon, the boundary between his province and Italy. To cross it with a legion was an act of treason, a declaration of war. He knew the stakes. He is said to have whispered, "Alea iecta est." The die is cast. He crossed, and the Republic, for all intents and purposes, died with that step. After defeating his rival Pompey, Caesar became dictator for life. He was a visionary, reforming the calendar, the administration. But to the old guard in the Senate, he was a king in all but name, and Romans knew what to do with kings. On the Ides of March 44 BC, they stabbed him 23 times in the Senate House, believing they were liberators, but they were only architects of a new chaos. The death of Caesar did not restore the Republic. It sparked another round of civil wars, fought between his avengers, Mark Antony, and his heir, Octavian, and his assassins. Out of the bloodshed, one man would stand supreme. The assassins were defeated. Then Octavian turned on his former ally, Antony, and his Egyptian queen, Cleopatra. At the Battle of Actium, their fleet was destroyed. Octavian was now the sole master of the Roman world. He had learned from his father's murder. He would not be a king. He would be the first citizen, princeps. He took the name Augustus, the revered one. The Republic was a ghost, its institutions a facade. In its place stood the Roman Empire. And for the next 2 centuries, it would experience its golden age. The age of Augustus began the Pax Romana, the Roman peace. For 200 years, from Britain to the Euphrates, there was unprecedented stability, prosperity, and connectivity. It was the empire's glorious summer. The emperors, for a time, were largely capable. Some, like Trajan, expanded the borders to their greatest extent. Others, like Hadrian, consolidated them, building walls to mark the limit of the world. The law was codified. Architecture reached for the gods. A Spaniard, a Syrian, or North African could all call themselves Roman. But the system had a fatal flaw. The question of succession was never truly solved. How do you replace an all-powerful emperor? Not by vote, but by violence. When an emperor died without a clear heir, the Praetorian Guard, the emperor's personal troops, would auction the throne to the highest bidder. Legions in the provinces would declare their own generals as emperor. The empire was a prize to be won by the strongest sword. And then in the 3rd century, the crisis became terminal. For 50 years, Rome was gripped by a crisis of the 3rd century. Emperors ruled for months, sometimes weeks, before being assassinated. The economy collapsed from hyperinflation. The borders cracked under simultaneous invasion from Germanic tribes in the north and a resurgent Persian Empire in the east. The empire was tearing itself apart. It seemed the end was near. But from the brink, it was pulled back by a series of soldier emperors from the frontier, men like Aurelian, the restorer of the world. And then came Diocletian. Diocletian understood the empire was too big, too chaotic for one man to rule. So he split it. The Tetrarchy, 2 senior emperors, Augusti, and 2 junior emperors, Caesars, one for the east, one for the west. It was a military solution to a political problem. It worked for a time, but it formalized a division that would never truly heal. When Diocletian retired, the only emperor to ever do so, the Tetrarchy collapsed into yet another civil war. Out of this final conflict, a new kind of emperor would emerge, one who would change the course of world history. His name was Constantine. The story goes that on the eve of a decisive battle, he saw a vision of a cross in the sky with the words, "In this sign, conquer." He won. And with the Edict of Milan in 313 AD, he legalized Christianity. This was a revolution. The faith that had been persecuted was now tolerated. By the end of the century, it would be the official state religion under Theodosius I. This transformed the Roman world. The old pagan gods were abandoned. The center of gravity began to shift. And Constantine made a